104.7 The Cave, KKLH, Marshfield, Springfield. Broadcasting from the Lorenz Plumbing, Heating, and Air Studios. Your home for the Kansas City Chiefs.
Touchdown! Kansas City!
It's Ned Talk, your live and local Chiefs pregame show. Hosted by Ned Reynolds, Joe Westen, and the B-Team. Proud members of the Chiefs Radio Network on 104.7 The Cave.
All right, Ned, if you are the Kansas City Chiefs, the first thing that you have to ask yourself on Monday morning after the Super Bowl was, hey, did anybody get the license plate for that truck that just ran us over? Because, man, they got pummeled. That was a serious beatdown.
It was, and a beatdown by a team on that day. Now, keep in mind, we're just making reference to the one day, was far better than the Chiefs. They played an outstanding football game. The defense of Vic Fangio had, when I was watching the game, I said to my friends with whom I was watching it, Kansas City, what are they doing? There's no direction out there. Now, that comes from watching singular action on television where you can't see the panorama.
Yeah.
And the panorama was his receivers were covered. Philadelphia's defensive scheme covered everybody, and with their quickness, they had it. And Kansas City didn't respond.
Well, they rushed four. They rushed four the entire game, so that leaves you 7 guys to drop back into coverage. And when you can do that, you can beat most teams in the NFL.
And we saw it last Sunday.
I'm Joe Westen. That's Ned Reynolds. Jake Gillette with us, along with Josh Roberts. It is Ned Talk. And I'm sorry, folks, we do have to talk about last Sunday. We have to talk about it. We have to cover this. And I'll be honest with everybody. I didn't watch the game. I had a bad feeling. So I told my wife, I said, you know what, let's pick a movie. I watched this film called Reptile. I was really glad that I watched it. Thought it was a great movie. Highly recommended. But I kept checking my phone, and I was just like, "Oh, this is not going well." I'm going to admit something for 2 of the guys in this room, Ned and Jake. They both said off the air last week, if it's a blowout, Eagles win, and they were 100% right.
Mm-hmm. 40-22, and the 22 that Kansas City had was garbage time. You knew that was going to happen. Philadelphia's playing that stupid prevent defense.
Yep.
And it's designed, hey, we know where you are. We got the game under control. And Kansas City able to score then. But other than that, it was a dominant performance by Philly. Now, I did read an article the next day, have we seen the crumbling of the Chiefs dynasty? And that is such balderdash. Mm-hmm. They'll be, I'm predicting right here, they will be in Santa Clara next year at Levi Stadium. That's where the Super Bowl is, in Santa Clara next year. They'll be there, or they will at least pose a genuinely large threat to being there.
Well, we talked about this all season long. I think all of us as people that follow the Chiefs looked at this team and go, wow, this is a really flawed team. But they kept winning. They kept going out each week, and you call it luck, call it fate, kismet, whatever. Something would happen, and they were able to pull out wins and win games. But, Jake, you know as well as anybody that follows sports, that can only go so far.
100%. Yeah, we kind of broke down the Eagles last week. I likened this defensive team to the Bucs defense back when they lost to Tom Brady in Tampa Bay, and that's exactly, it was like deja vu. Watching Mahomes run around, and the difference between those two was Mahomes was actually making plays against Tampa Bay. Our guys weren't catching him. This one, he had no time to throw. Sacked 6 times. I think he was sacked 4 in the first half. And they did. The Eagles did exactly what they did to Washington. They got the turnovers. They turned those turnovers into points. 17 points off turnovers, and you can't do that in the Super Bowl. And so, yeah, you can dissect it all you want. I like how Ned calls our 22 points junk points, because that's what they were. I'm just glad they posted something. Xavier Worthy looked fantastic. That kid, that's one thing I pulled away from the game, is like, okay, that kid's legit. I know we've all been saying it all year. He's really good, but yeah, but that defense by Philly it was nothing like the defense, and they had a chip on their shoulder. You guys got to realize it. This was 2 years ago that they lost to the Chiefs, and the Chiefs won 38-35. They had a good defense. That was a 70-sack season year for the Eagles. But this year it was all about that O-line not protecting Mahomes, and the defensive line rushing 4, like you said, where they could do whatever they wanted, and that's exactly what they did.
Josh, I think Jake said it best. This game so much reminded me of the Buccaneers game where the Chiefs lost in the Super Bowl. They were just dominated from start to finish, and that game dominated start to finish. This game, got to fix it offensive line, right?
Oh yeah, they do, definitely. And I agree. I agree with both of you that this game reminded me of the Tampa Bay one where Mahomes couldn't set his feet because as soon as the ball was snapped, there was pressure on him, and it's crazy. I mean, as I was watching the game, I kept thinking to myself, "There's only 4. They're only rushing 4," and they were, even when they left in an extra tight end to block, they had 7 against 4, and they still couldn't stop these guys. These guys were pushing right through them, overbearingly dominated with 4 guys on the defensive line, and that's just, it's inexcusable. That's the flaw in the Chiefs team, is that offensive line, and that's what they've got to address in the offseason. Because in my opinion, this was a 34-0 game, because it was 34-0 before the Eagles took their foot off their neck, and then it ended up 40-22. So the Eagles' backups still scored 6 points on them, and the Chiefs got the junk points when they did. But yeah, it's been a while since any of us have seen the Chiefs get dominated like that. And so, yeah, they've got some things to address. I agree with you. Worthy was the most impressive Chief on the field. That kid is stellar. But I was disappointed in the Chiefs' defense. They did not dominate the way that they have dominated most of the year, and that's strange to me. Also, one thing I noticed, Patrick Mahomes looked like he had no sleep. He had bags under his eyes. He looked exhausted. And I know there were extenuating circumstances outside of the game that he had just learned about with his grandfather passed away the day before. So who knows how much sleep he actually got. But he looked tired to me.
Ned Talk on 104.7 The Cave. It is a local live sports talk show program. Ned Reynolds, Joe Weston, Jake Gillette, Josh Roberts all in today talking about the Chiefs and the Eagles last week. Ned, one question that I wanted to ask you or get your opinion on is that we've talked a lot in this show about Patrick Mahomes and trust. It looked like during the course of that game, his trust for other players faded.
It did. There's no question about it. It did. He hurried his passes. He had to hurry them because he was under such pressure. The one that sticks out in my mind is one of the passes he normally completes when he rolls out, throws a quick darting pass, and it's very quick. He throws it hard to a receiver who is diving for it. That is the plan. That's what they have. The receiver is supposed to dive into the zone. Well, he threw one of those, and it got intercepted.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe what I was seeing. The linebacker, it was thrown behind the linebacker, turned around and intercepted it, and it set up. This was not DeGene, but this was the another one of their defenders. But he turned around and was able to pick it off backhand, and I think it ended up with a touchdown. I'm not sure. It may have been a field goal.
You're thinking of Bond.
Bond, that's who it was. Zach Bond, who got the interception. But, boy, Patrick Mahomes never has those passes picked or even deflected, but he did this time because Philadelphia knew exactly what was going on and defended against it, and the Chiefs made absolutely no adjustment. There isn't any question that when the draft comes up in April, Kansas City has to go to young linemen and a whole plethora of them to come in and hopefully master the scheme that they have on the left side, because Mahomes simply was not Mahomes. The 6 sacks that was talked about in the game is the most he has ever had in a game. In a game. Never. He had 5. He was sacked 5 times in a game this year. That was the most. And here's 6 by a team that's not even blitzing. What is this? Well, the fact of the matter remains that Philly had their defensive game plan under Vic Fangio so ready for this one. They knew what was going to happen, and indeed it did, and Kansas City didn't adjust.
Jake, what happened to the defense? I mean, as Josh said, they all season long, we've propped up the Chiefs defense, talked about how great they were, that one of the best defenses in the NFL. How did they give up 40 points?
Well, 6 of them came from a pick 6. That touchdown you were talking about, the linebacker, Mahomes got hit. Tooney just got blown right into him. Mahomes got hit from the left, and that switched his pattern of throwing it, and that's how he intercepted that ball. That turned into 6 points easy. I will tell you what I think. They were so focused to show the world that they could stop Saquon Barkley that they couldn't defend the receivers. Dallas Goedert was wide open all the time. The passes to A.J. Brown were spot on. The big deep one to what is his name, Smith. I mean, they were just, and he had all the time in the world. You also got to realize that we didn't pressure him. I think he had 1 sack, maybe 2.
If he had one, I'm surprised.
He was able to sit back there and just pick off because everybody's getting open.
I was listening to the pregame show when we left here, and one of the things that the Westwood One guys were talking about was they were concerned for Jaylen Brown and the exotic blitzes that the Chiefs bring. None of that worked, right?
No. Hurts sat there and just had all the time in the world, made the right decisions, had 70 yards rushing. I mean, it was. I will tell you, the Chiefs or the Eagles, you would have thought that there would have been a flip side of the coin there where Andy having 2 weeks to have his team ready. Those Eagles were ready, and they showed us all.
Josh, what point in the game did you know, oh, this is not our Sunday?
It was in the first quarter.
I know what it was.
Yeah, well, ask all you guys that question.
Wasn't it like 14-0 in the first quarter?
It was. They went up 10. It was 10-0.
10-0.
10-0, yeah.
Yeah, that, and at the end of the first quarter, I'm like, this is not good. This is not going to be good. Because the Chiefs looked
flat,
unable to do anything, and the Eagles were controlling every aspect of the game. And so I thought that unless they can make some huge adjustments, this is going to get ugly, and it did.
It impressed me the second series that Kansas City had. You have to look at Kansas City and their concept of football. They like to go out and dominate right from the get-go. Sometimes it's their first possession. Sometimes it's their second possession. Well, when their first possession went flat, it's okay. They're just, all they were doing, feeling out Philadelphia. Second possession, they're going to roll this time. They're going to run and pass and get that ball. They're going to dominate and set the tempo. And they didn't do anything. Nothing on that second series. It was 3 and out. Ooh, this is not good for Kansas City because they're not dominating. And then Philadelphia went down and scored. And keep in mind, Philadelphia had another touchdown taken away from them on the offensive interference when the guy was way down there on the 5-yard line. And,
oh, that's right.
And shaky call, but hey, they're all shaky. So The fact of the matter remains that Philly had the game well in hand.
Yeah, I would say, to answer your question, when I knew it was over, we're down 17-0 after the pick six. And it's like, okay, you're down 17 points. You have the ball. Let's go into halftime. You get the ball after halftime. Let's make this 14-17. Yeah. And he throws that pick. Now it's down 24-0 going into halftime. And I was like, okay, 5% of me thinks we're going to make this work because Tom Brady and them were down the same amount of points.
They were 28.
To Atlanta. And then they come out. And, guys, they were the first 10 possessions of the Chiefs. One time where they passed the 50-yard line. One time. So they come out. They do the same thing. 3 and out. And I'm like, yep. All right, let's crack open another beer. I've been drinking, boys, since, last Sunday. I haven't stopped.
I know. I didn't even talk to Mike about it.
Smell it on you.
I mean, first of all, let me ask you, how was talking to Mike on Monday?
Well, I had to do it on remote. I couldn't come in then. And Mike doesn't remember saying this, but he did. I'm sure as hell glad you're not in the studio today.
Yeah, I completely avoided him most of the week. I didn't talk to him about it at all. But Josh, I kind of, personally, we're a Chiefs radio show.
Yeah.
So we're supposed to talk about the Chiefs, and I love doing that. I'm a convert to the Chiefs, okay? I'm no longer a heathen. Convert to the Chiefs. I'm a bandwagon fan, I guess you'd call me, as Kevin calls me.
Welcome.
But I just had a bad feeling about this game. I just, deep inside myself, and none of us, I think you did too, and I think you did too. You just didn't want to say it out loud.
True.
Had a bad feeling about this game.
Yeah, I was probably the one that didn't have a bad. I thought that the Chiefs would do what the Eagles ended up doing to them. I thought that their defense would be dominant and they'd be able to move the ball around. But I was shocked at how much better the Eagles looked than the Chiefs in this game. And I can say this. I always refer back to my Alabama fandom. Alabama, in the midst of them dominating in college football, they got their butt whooped by Clemson. And it hurts when it happens because you're like, this shouldn't be happening. They're dominant. They should be dominating. But then afterwards, you have to look at the big picture. And that's when I ran into Mike yesterday. That's what he said. He's looking at the big picture now. The Chiefs have been to the Super Bowl 5 times in the last
6 years.
6 years. 6 years. Yeah.
Yep.
That's domination still. Yes, this was not a good one, but in the midst of this run, they've had one really bad Super Bowl, and the rest of them, they're a dominant team.
Ned, when you walked in, you mentioned that there was an article that you read called "Is This the Crumbling of the Chiefs Dynasty?" I guarantee you that the writer that wrote that also had a story that was, "Is this the greatest NFL dynasty we've ever seen?" And they were just waiting to put which one out.
100%.
Because that's the way it goes. I mean, when you read these articles online or you read them in papers anymore, I mean, they're all basically clickbait. Mm-hmm. I mean, they have one that says, these are the foods you should eat, the foods you shouldn't eat. And that's the same thing with this, right? I mean, they're the team you love to hate or you love to love, right?
And that's the category they do fit in, but they're hardly the first ones. The Yankees back in the 40s and 50s, you loved to hate them and hated because you loved them and all that. It happened. Brooklyn Dodgers, same way. And in football, Kansas City's been there. There were, this game's in New Orleans. Listen to the crowd when the teams were introduced. Kansas City had their great contingent of fans. Philadelphia had more of them and louder fans because
they're Philly fans.
They've earned that respect, though. Kansas City's earned that respect, and the crumbling of the dynasty is absolute rubbish. I think they'll be back. They're a very good football team. Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback, and you're right. He probably had some. The distractions that he had are more emotional than anything else. I don't think it controlled what he did in the game. He was dominated himself by Philadelphia, but he did have some distractions. His dad got into a fight at
John
a bar
Rocker.
with John Rocker of all people.
What?
Oh,
that guy's popped back up again.
John
Rocker.
Were they on a subway together? All right. When we come back, we'll talk about what the Chiefs have to do to get back there next year. It's Ned Talk on 104.7 The Cave.
You're listening to Ned Talk on 104.7 The Cave, a proud member of the Chiefs Radio Network. Back to Ned Talk on 104.7 The Cave, a proud member of the Chiefs Radio Network.
Here we are in the studio on this balmy Sunday. Ned Talk on 104.7 The Cave. All right, we've talked about the past. We can leave that where it's at.
Okay.
We can move on to the future. Talk about what the Chiefs have to do to get ready for next season. We touched on it a little bit. Obviously, the draft is going to be a place where they're going to look to make some big inroads as far as getting some offensive linemen in there or maybe do some signings or whatever. But, Ned, you've mentioned several times they are pretty limited in what they can do cap space-wise.
That's why we mentioned the draft, because free agents are probably not going to be forthcoming. Kansas City can only afford so many, and they still have a number of renewals of contracts to sign, including free agents of their own, and there are several on that team. Is it, Jake, 30? Is that what they have, 30 free agents?
Yep, 30 free agents.
Now, some of them are restricted free agents, and they have no options. They're probably going to sign back with the Chiefs. But the unrestricted ones are some of the bigger names, including Bolton and people of that caliber, Omenahu. Well, the fact is that the Chiefs will have to be very judicious with what they do. Only $11 million in cap space, and that's just not a lot of money to spend on free agents. But it does get you through a draft. Now, are there any, singularly speaking, good draft picks who can step in and anchor down the left side of that line? Probably, somewhere along the line, but it takes a very astute level of scouting to pick them out and to get them through in the draft, because the really good – the Chiefs draft 31st. They're 31st in the first round of the draft, number 30. The Chiefs had 6 draft choices this year, and they'll pick number 31 in the first round. Now, who's going to be remaining who they might want? Well, then there's where the scouting comes in, and the scouting combine will be getting underway in Indianapolis here. I think it's next week or the week after. So there will be a lot of individuals looking over the talent there, but there's no question the left side of the line needs improving, and some of the other individuals need to step up now. Does Travis Kelce stick around?
Yeah, that was the question I'm going to ask you guys. What do you think?
I think he does not.
Okay.
And the reason I say that is, at first, in the euphoria of having won a championship, this is the AFC championship. I'll be back. Well, the more he thought about it, he did a podcast last week, and he was very hesitant. He said these things take a long time after all, you're deciding your future, and this takes a while. And he said, I'm going to think about it for a while, and eventually, I guess, in the mindset of players, the pain factor begins to come in because he takes a lot of hits, and he's 35 years old, and he has his girlfriend there, and she's more than a celebrity than he is. There are just so many factors involved.
He doesn't have to work again for the rest of his life.
Never.
I mean, he made a $100 million podcast with him and his brother. And he's made a lot of money as a player, and he's made quite a bit of money doing the stuff that he does on the side. And, I know that he wants to act and has done some acting. So this is a guy that's got a bright future beyond the NFL. And I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't end up in a booth somewhere, too, because he's got quite a personality.
Well, he's not an inarticulate individual. He would have to go through some shaping of his vernacular and things of that nature to fit into that. Look at Tom Brady. Here's Brady, who's a pretty astute individual. It's taken him a lot of coaching and a lot of polishing. He really didn't come around this year after a full year of getting tutored by it. So Kelce would have to go through the same thing. But yeah, there's room for him in so many capacities. And him and his brother, that's a big deal, very big deal.
What do you think? Do you think he comes back, Jake?
Man, that's a really good question. I think, it's crazy if you talk to some of the Chief fans. They're ready for him to move on. You could feel, he still had a good year. He almost had 100 catches. He was in the 90s somewhere. He had almost 900 yards. So it's not like he's irrelevant. And he does take, people need to pay attention to him when he's on the field. But as far as a personal aspect, I bet you he's really leaning on what his brother has to say about it. I don't know if anybody's asked Jason, now they've won the Super Bowl, is there any regrets? Do you wish you would have came back? You wish you would have put one more year in? So there's always those things. I'm sure Jason, he'll ask his older brother what he thinks. There's a lot going on the outside, like you said. He's trying this acting gig. He's got the podcast. He's making tons of money there. The girlfriend thing, he likes to travel, watch her do her thing. So I think he's got a lot on his plate, and I think if you're going to try to be a football player, you need to give your all to your team, and I don't think he was there this year, so I'm 50-50 on the whole thing.
I think people want to say that. The guy is 35. He is a no doubt Hall of Famer. He is probably the greatest tight end ever to play the game, and he's 35 years old. His body's taking a beating, and because he's dating somebody, whether it's Taylor Swift or not, everybody wants to call her girlfriend. Let's say Taylor Swift. Whether it's Taylor Swift or not, people are going to say, oh, well, he's in a relationship now, so he can't dedicate himself full-time to sports. How do you say that? How do you say that to Patrick Mahomes? He's been married. He has 3 kids. I think he's there. I think he's just getting older.
I think with married with 3 kids, it's more of a stable feeling. I got something to do. I got something to go home. I don't have to, you want to keep the wife happy, right? But it's like with a girlfriend, we've all known our buddies who's had them that change.
Yeah.
They change. And they're trying to put on their best show and put on their best foot forward for this girl. And sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. But I think that if you're trying to compare the two, that's really hard to do. Totally two different. Britney's not Taylor Swift.
I would let me say this though, Chiefs fans, be careful what you wish for.
I agree with that
because you're not. Yeah, that organization been extremely fortunate with tight ends. So before
Tony G.
Yeah,
the best.
He's replacing Tony Gonzalez, who was the best tight end that played the game. Is Noah Gray that guy, or are you going to have to find somebody else? Especially in a league where the tight end's becoming more and more important as it goes along. You're seeing a lot of teams really focus on that position. What do you think, Josh? You think Travis Kelce comes back or leaves?
I think he should. He has nothing else to prove. Like you said, he's a surefire Hall of Famer. He's got some rings. He's got this whole second life that's starting for him that is very lucrative and very exciting. And the war of attrition only gets worse every year. And especially, he's 35, which is young in the world, but not in a football world. So I think he should retire. He's got nothing else to do. And as far as Noah Gray, I don't think Noah Gray will be the next Travis Kelce. I think the Chiefs will have to shift their focus a little bit with how they use their tight ends, because they're not going to have another tight end that can be a receiver the way that Kelce has been. But I hope that I hope he does retire for his own benefit, for his own well-being, because more and more over the years we find out more and more about players that held on too long and end up having debilitating health issues throughout the rest of their life because of it. And if he can get out of here relatively healthy and go do all this stuff that's going to make him tons of money and enjoy being with Taylor Swift and do some acting, more power to you, man. Do it. You proved your worth in the NFL. Now go do something fun.
Yeah, he's got 1 year left on his contract, does he not?
Yes, that's right.
And the Chiefs have put him on the time clock because there's these rumors going around. So, like, hey, we need to know, right? Because they got some 30 free agents to figure out what they're doing with. So
let me ask you guys this. I guess the other big name in your gut, is this person going to be back or not? And that's Spagnuolo.
Well, if all 7 of the NFL head coaching jobs have been filled now, and it could be that somebody will come along and say, "Hey, we're going to offer you a king's ransom to come in and be a defensive coach, with the understanding that you'll be the next head coach somewhere along the line." Yeah, that could happen, but in terms of his head coaching, no, it won't. And I think Spagnuolo likes it in Kansas City. He's formulated a very, very good defensive unit. Of course, you don't always have the same players, and with each season comes a different concept and a different level, but he's pretty good at what he does.
Who's the must-sign guy that the Chiefs have to, off of their own roster, they've got to do something with?
Nick Bolton.
100%.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Nick Bolton's the defensive captain. Mm-hmm. He is a very, very, very good outside linebacker. He can play the game, calls the defensive signals. They have to have him.
Reed, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Reed would be the second. If they can get those 2 guys back, that'll solidify our somewhat of our defense. And we got a great run defense. I mean, whatever they have going on defensive, I haven't looked at Omenahu's also on that.
Omenahu is a free agent.
On the free agent. So I would say, shore up that defense, but then can you afford it? You got some restructuring to do as far as salary cap is concerned, and then obviously with the rookies, try to find some guys that come in, or some cheap guys that's got a couple years left that's been an experience on the offensive side of things.
Hollywood Brown, he come back or not?
Well, of course, he has the injury factor, but he did play a little bit. And Marquise Brown is a very, very good player. You don't go to OU and have a standout career and not be a very good player. Their receiving core is good, but I would not label them as great. And I think if they do make a decision on him, it would probably be in training camp, not in their spring training camp. I'm talking about the training camp at the end of the year, if they have, or start of the season, I should say. If they haven't made any kind of thought process along those lines, I think they will then. But it wouldn't hurt to have him on the team. He can play. He didn't have a great year. Well, he was injured for all year. But the fact is that he certainly has potential.
Well, you're looking at next year with the Chiefs coming back, one side being Xavier Worthy, who we all feel is possibly going to be a number 1 receiver, and the other side is Rashee Rice, who was going to be the number 1 receiver for the Chiefs this year, but hurt in a free accident where he had his knee taken out by Patrick Mahomes' helmet. So
yeah, he also has some legal things he's got to shore up. We don't know how that's going to shake out.
That should be forthcoming here in the next several weeks, I would think.
In March.
Yep. All right, when we come back, we're going to shift gears, talk about baseball. It's Ned Talk on 104.7 The Cave.
You're listening to Ned Talk on 104.7 The Cave, a proud member of the Chiefs Radio Network. Back to Ned Talk on 104.7 The Cave, a proud member of the Chiefs Radio Network.
Ned, I say you and I, after the show's done, we just get on an airplane, we fly down to Florida.
Snowbirds.
Watch some baseball, let the snow blow over. and come back. How about that?
I would take that. When do we leave?
Right. We'll just we're just gonna go. We're gonna go. Spring training underway.
Take that in a second.
Pitchers and catchers are reported. There's some stories going on, developing, and of course we start with our Cardinals. Arenado still a St. Louis Cardinal. I kind of thought maybe something would happen this week, Ned, after Lance Bergman signed with the Boston Red Sox, that somebody would pony up to the table and say, okay, well, Bergman's gone. Arenado's our backup plan, but so far he's still a Cardinal.
Well, the fact of the matter remains, it's not the Cardinals choosing that he stays. They want him gone, and he probably wants gone himself, not because of emotional circumstances with the team, but rather because he wants to play for a winner. Now, it could be the Cardinals are winners. It could be with him being the contributor, but the big falling point with him is he's not a free agent. You've got to trade for him. And he still has until 2027 on that contract, in which if you do trade him, if I trade him to Josh Roberts, Josh is responsible for that contract, unless the Cardinals step forward and say, okay, it's $64 million we owe him. We'll pay half of that. If they paid half of that, he's gone. They don't want to pay half of that. They want to pay a minuscule amount of it, or they not want to, but they will settle for a minor amount of it. But it isn't there. And nobody wants a guy. He's 33 years old. Yes, he can play, but is it worth that amount of money? And the answer apparently is no. The Boston Red Sox had their chance, but now they do have the free agent from the Houston Astros, who I thought was probably going to go to the Cubs, in all honesty. But he isn't. And there's just so many variables involved. I think Arenado will full team workouts are tomorrow. They start tomorrow, go on for a week, and then the first exhibition game is next Saturday. And I suspect that Arenado he's probably there now, in camp now.
He has reported, it says, and that they're still working on a trade to get him out. I know the Yankees have made at least 2 offers to the Cardinals. They originally with Marcus Stroman, who's their headache right now because he's an extra starter that they don't need. And I also know that they offered young Oswaldo Cabrera for him, and the Cardinals didn't take either one of those offers.
I would back off on Marcus Stroman. Now, in his prime, he's a Duke University guy. In his prime, he could throw real hard, really hard. But in recent years, and he's been with a lot of teams, with the Pirates and with the Yankees, with somebody else too prior to that, he's gotten shelled pretty good. I think that would be a minus. So I doubt very much the Cardinals settle for that.
Yeah, it's the Yankees have offered him a bullpen position. He's not happy with that. So they got a problem there. They got to move him and figure that out. What else are the Cardinals? I mean, when I look at their record last year, they were 83-79. So they had a winning record. They are not far off of being competitive, but we've talked about this quite a bit on the show. That the Cardinals seem to want to do this the organic way, which that can take a decade or more to even do stuff like that.
Well, I'll debate very quickly the competitive. They are competitive. They're a good team. As you mentioned, they're above 500 last year, could have made the playoffs with a few breaks here and there, but they didn't have quite the consistency that a championship-level team would have, that Cardinals teams in the past have had. And the thought process of the front office, and these are the people who make the decisions now, Mr. DeWitt, and at least for a while, Mr. Mosaic and Chaim Bloom and people of that caliber, they're the ones calling the shots. And if their viewpoint is that this team's not going to go and not going to make it with what we have right now, then they do have to do some revitalizing of it. But with Arenado in there, Goldschmidt won't be, but with Arenado in there and what they have, they're going to win some games. Can they win the National League Central? I think the Cubs will probably be the preseason favorite to do so, but yeah, the Cardinals could do so, and then when they get in the playoffs, everything gets tossed out the window anyway. And you don't want to snap to any rash decisions, but I don't think a trade for Arenado, the way things are right now, is forthcoming, at least in the first half of the season. It may be a trade deadline deal is when he leaves.
Let's turn our attention across the state to the Kansas City Royals, who had a great season last year. Surprised a lot of people, and this year people are going to be ready for them. So what do the Royals have to do to continue that upward swing.
Maintain themselves and not get carried away. And winning and repeating in baseball is very difficult to do because you have to have a lot of things going right for you. Obviously, the personnel has to be, but the personnel is there. Kansas City has done it. They've proven that they can be competitive. Let's see, who do they open with? It's the Cardinals open with the Twins.
They play the Guardians.
That's who it is, Cleveland. They play Cleveland in the opener, and therein is going to be their chief competition right there. But Kansas City is certainly capable, and I wouldn't be at all surprised to see them back in the playoffs again this year.
Do you think they're the favorites to win?
No, not in the Central.
Who do you think is?
Cleveland.
Really?
Cleveland.
What about Detroit? They've made some moves there.
Detroit is also going to be very good. They're kind of a mirror image of the Royals. And made the nice comeback last year, coming back from a couple of dreadful seasons. And Detroit can play, but they wanted Arenado. I'm sorry. They wanted Bergman on their team and didn't get him. But nonetheless, it's a good Detroit ball club.
You can't ever count out the Twins too in that division because they seem to always put together a very competitive group of guys, and sometimes they click, sometimes they don't. My question, I guess, is will the White Sox be as historically as bad as they were last year?
We'll see how they could be. They were just horrendous. You're talking about a season falling apart. That one totally crumbled for them. There's just nothing there. Now, will they be competitors this year? No, probably not, but they won't be that bad. They couldn't possibly be.
But their name has not been mentioned in the offseason that much either. I mean, they've really not made any moves to kind of better themselves. And that's kind of been the way it looks like that baseball's kind of shook itself out this year, is that a lot of the major market teams making the moves and a lot of the smaller market teams kind of hanging back and see what's going on. I mean, you look out at the Dodgers made several moves. The Yankees have made moves. The Braves have made moves. But everybody else and the Mets who are trying to figure that out. Of course, they made the biggest offseason signing. How does that all work out for everybody?
Well, we're about to find out because some of the key in the Mets case, Pete Alonso was dangled out there for everybody, and nobody took him, so he's back with the Mets again. They'll have a very good team. New York's a program that you can equate with a lot of other teams. It's depending on the year and depending on the level of consistency from your players is going to be dependent on how you do. They're not bad. They're not bad at all. Can they stay for a whole season with Philadelphia and with Atlanta and people of that caliber in the National League East? It's going to be a major challenge for them.
Let me ask you this. Do you see Pittsburgh being better this year? I mean, they've got a full season of Paul Skeens.
But they don't have Skeens going every game, though.
No, they don't. I think he probably would like to, but it'd be interesting to see how this kid pitches a full season.
He'll be fine. He's a really, really solid pitcher. Now, having said that, this is Major League Baseball, and that book that makes its turn around the league, and the other teams read how is he vulnerable, what pitches is he throwing at certain times, and these are all subtleties that fall into the game. And these teams, they thrive, many of them, on the subtleties that do exist. Skeens is good. He's a very, very good pitcher, maybe the best. And he probably is going to end up with a winning record somewhere along the line. But the Pittsburgh team, in and of itself, is still lacking some big-time players, and it's just going to be a little tough.
So I assume you're going to have the Dodgers in the West. Who do you have in the Central, the National League Central? Cubs?
Now, the Cubs.
Who do you have in the National League East? Phillies?
Well, of course. Are there any other teams?
Yeah. American League West, who you got there?
I would have to think, gosh, in the West, there's so many variables involved in that West. Every year the Seattle Mariners are there, and yet they don't seem to do things. The Astros seem to have spent their better days, and they don't have some of their key individuals back. But for a team to make it in the American League West, I would have to cast a nod toward Seattle.
What about the Athletics? Just the Athletics this year.
And they are officially the Athletics, but euphemistically you can call them the Sacramento Athletics. But no, they'll continue to play hard. They all play hard, but I don't think they'll really make a name for themselves.
You've got Cleveland in the Central. Okay, answer this question
Yes,
very
Yankees,
carefully.
the Yankees
All
will
right,
win it.
very good. All right, when we come back, we'll tell everybody what we're watching on TV this afternoon. It's Ned Talk on 104.7 The Cave.
You're listening to Ned Talk on 104.7 The Cave, a proud member of the Chiefs Radio Network. Back to Ned Talk on 104.7 The Cave, a proud member of the Chiefs Radio Network.
We have a winter weather advisory that starts at midnight on Monday, runs all the way through Tuesday. Expected snow and rain on Tuesday and Wednesday, 7 to 14 inches. I'm hoping that is way wrong.
Yeah.
I would imagine the grocery stores are, everybody apparently makes French toast whenever it snows a lot because there's no milk, there's no eggs, and there's no bread, and you have to have the cinnamon, so there you go.
Yeah.
So what, I'm guessing.
A little sports news for you, Joe.
Okay.
The Professional Bowlers Association are in town at Enterprise Lanes. It's
Yeah,
on
that's right.
TV right
Yep.
now.
I saw
that. This is the and it's one of the regular stops on the PBA tour, and yeah, they're on Enterprise second year in a row, and it's a nationally televised event.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's cool.
It is. It's one of Ned and I share our love of this time of the year. First of all, Super Bowl, and then you get into March Madness and Masters and baseball starting, and of course, you know how I love the XFL or whatever it's called these days. I love watching that.
They don't start
NFL.
until I think the second or third week in March is when they'll begin, and they'll carry over their season too. Interesting. I'll be anxious to see what their TV ratings are a second year around. They do have some money, and they do have a TV contract to work with, but this close to a Super Bowl game and with the combine going on and so forth and so on, I'll be interested to see how many people are tuned into the whatever they call it, United States Football League, I think is what it is now.
United States Football League,
United Football X.
whatever it is. Yeah.
USXFL.
Well,
I
you
never
know,
figured it out. I
there
can't
was
get into
there was that one league that was out there for a while where the fans, I forget what it was called, but we talked about it. The fans actually got to call the play.
Oh.
They do really quick voting, and then they would signal into the quarterback the play that he was supposed to call by fan voting. So
It's a
I
concept.
thought that was interesting. And, of course, we'll have arena football be back again this year. And that's pretty exciting. So a lot of stuff going on this time of year. And also there's a dirt bike competition, I believe, that's out at the Ozark Empire Fairgrounds.
It is concluding today, as a matter of fact.
A lot of stuff going on. Comic-Con's going on today downtown. It's good time to be out, as always. All right, Ned. You're going to go home, you're going to put up the leg, and what are you going to watch on TV?
Probably a little bit of the Daytona 500. It's already started, and that's assuming the weather conditions are such that they can get it in. Watch a little bit of that, but then after that, that's a good question. We'll see if there are any old Columbos on. I love to watch them.
I've been watching Hawaii Five-0.
Hawaii
I've
Five-0.
been watching the old ones
The
from
old
the
one.
70s.
Nice.
What about you, Jake? What are you going to go home and watch?
I have no idea. Honestly, it's snowing. We've got family coming over for dinner, so
What are you having for dinner?
lasagna, homemade.
All right, I'll be over. What
time
time?
should
Ned's coming.
Yeah, we'll all be over there.
be
Oh,
there?
Josh, Joe.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're all
Hey,
coming.
if you're listening, wife, we got 3 more coming.
Yeah.
Josh, what about you? What are you going to watch?
I don't know. I may watch a movie or something. May watch the back of my eyelids. It just depends on what's
Watch
on.
Reptile. You'll like it.
Okay, I'll look
That's
that
with
up.
Justin Timberlake, isn't it?
Yeah, he plays a real estate agent in it, but Benicio del Toro's in it too, and he's very
Okay.
good. Yeah, he's very good.
Benicio?
Benicio.
I like him.
Benicio does that. All right, guys, this is our regular time. We'll be back here next Sunday at noon. If you want to listen to us as a podcast, you can download us through our website at 1047thecave.com. You can listen anytime on your Cave smartphone app, or just search out Ned Talk, wherever you get your podcasts at. Thanks to Brian Tindall, Mike Holmes, Ned Reynolds, Josh Roberts, Jake Gillette, Alex Scott, who's not here today. We'll see you next Sunday, Alec, Nick Fury, Brian Tindall, Mason Brian before. He's general manager, so he deserves 2 thank yous, and Corbin Campbell. We'll see you guys next week.